She married him, not because she loved him, but because she knew I did. Have you ever trusted someone with your heart, only to watch them hand it to someone else? Have you ever lost everything in silence? Your mother, your love, and your chance, all in one cruel season? Zariah never fought back. She disappeared. She let them have their perfect life, but 2 years later, the woman they tried to erase came back stronger, smarter, and unbothered. Now the question isn't what she lost, it's what she's about to take back. Would you walk into a room where your ex was now your sister's husband? Comment below and stay with us until the end, because this story will shake your soul. Zariah Green wasn't the type to chase men, especially not rich, powerful ones. She worked quietly, built slowly, loved deeply. But when she met Cole Maddox, something inside her shifted. He was her boss, but it was more than that. They connected, mind first, then something unspoken. He noticed her, not for her body, not for the curve of her mouth, but for the way her ideas made him pause. It was the kind of slow burn people write poetry about. Until her mother got sick. Until her half-sister Selena showed up. Until silence replaced honesty. And betrayal replaced trust. Cole married Selena. Zariah never knew why. She walked away from the company, from the city, from the man. She let them live in their illusion, until life gave her one more invitation, one more chance to walk into a gala and look both of them in the eyes, not with revenge, not with bitterness, but with the kind of strength you only find when you've already lost everything. Zariah Green always believed in keeping her head down and her standards high. On her first day at Maddox and Company, she wore the only blazer she owned, navy blue, a bit tight at the shoulders. Her black pumps clicked softly on the polished floors as she moved past glass offices and bold campaign posters. She didn't belong, not yet, but she intended to. Her desk was tucked into the creative wing. All around her, seasoned designers clicked away on Macs and sipped overpriced espresso. She didn't speak unless spoken to, but when she did, her voice was calm, assured, and clear. Her mock-ups weren't flashy, but they were sharp, deliberate, and deeply considered. She didn't know then that Cole Maddox had already noticed her. Cole was the kind of CEO who walked without a sound but left tension in the air. Mid-30s, razor-cut hair, tailored suits that weren't trying to prove anything. He didn't bark. He asked questions that sliced through excuses. Zariah saw him once in her first week. Just once. He walked past the bullpen, nodding to a few senior execs. When he paused by her desk, her heart punched her ribs. She was sure he wouldn't speak, but he did. "You worked on the Johnson rebrand comp?" She nodded. He picked it up, scanned the corners, flipped it upside down. Why lowercase the word legacy? Her throat dried, because when you whisper legacy, people lean in. When you shout it, they pull back. He paused, a long pause. Then he placed the mock-up back on her desk and said, "Carry on." He walked away. Her legs shook under the table for 3 minutes straight. By the end of month 2, she was asked to present directly to creative director Tanya Cho. And by month 4, Cole himself requested Zariah sit in on the weekly brand pulse sessions. No one said it out loud, but they saw it. The way his eyes settled longer on her when she spoke. The way he asked her thoughts last and listened the longest. But Zariah never confused proximity with intention. She stayed professional. She never lingered after meetings. She never sent long thank you emails. She kept her head down. She'd seen what happened to interns who confused admiration with affection. She wouldn't be one of them. Then came the late nights, not because of him, because of her hunger. Zariah stayed to finish a rebrand draft one Thursday night. Around 9:12 p.m., the elevator dinged. She didn't look up. She assumed it was security. "You forgot to label slide 7. She spun. Cole stood in the doorway with his sleeves rolled and his eyes soft for the first time ever. She blinked. "You're still here?" "I'm always the last to leave." She motioned toward the deck. "Slide 7 is the client breakdown. Still building the logic." He walked in, not asking permission. "Your logic's usually solid," he said, standing behind her. "But this one feels personal." She hesitated. "They're a family-owned company. They lost their founder this year. Their new vision reads like a bandage." I wanted to speak to the grief without being obvious. He didn't reply for a while. Then softly, "I buried my father last year." That grief, it never really leaves. Zariah's fingers stopped moving. "I didn't know. You weren't supposed to." They stood in silence for a moment. No buzz, no flirtation, just two people with quiet bruises. That was the night something shifted. They weren't lovers, not yet, not even romantically involved. But something unspoken started to live between them. Zariah began arriving earlier, and Cole's door stayed slightly more open. They didn't touch. They didn't flirt. But when he sent her direct feedback with a note that said, "This one sounds like you didn't trust yourself," she took it seriously. And when she replied, "I'll stop second-guessing once you start delegating," he laughed, really laughed, for the first time in months. Things grew personal but stayed unspoken, until her mother fell ill. Zariah didn't tell anyone at work, not at first. She took half-days, returned emails at odd hours, and slept in hospital chairs. Cole noticed. Of course, he did. "Everything okay?" She blinked twice, weighing the risk. "My mom, she's not doing well." He nodded once, then twice. "Take the time. Work can wait." She stepped back. "I don't want special treatment." He looked at her, firm. "It's not special. It's human." She left that night with her first tear in weeks clinging to her lower lashes. Zariah's mother passed within 10 days. Cancer. Fast. Unforgiving. She returned to work a month later. Pale, thinner, quieter. She refused flowers. Ignored sympathy. She threw herself into projects like they were oxygen. But her distance wasn't just grief. It was confusion. During that time, she hadn't heard from Cole. Not once. She expected a message, a check-in, something. But the man who once saw her at her rawest vanished into silence. So she shut down. She buried her hurt. She retreated. She avoided him in hallways, sat 2 chairs away in meetings, said less, smiled never. Whatever they had been building, it was done, or so she thought. 2 months later, on a Sunday afternoon, she opened her phone out of habit and nearly dropped it. Selena Green is engaged to Cole Maddox, her half-sister, her blood. Zariah didn't scream. She didn't text anyone, didn't call Cole, didn't even blink. She just stared at the glowing screen, heart slowing like it knew how badly it was about to be broken. Selena Green. The name looked so casual above Cole's, but nothing about it was casual. Nothing about her half-sister ever was. They shared a father, not a bond. Zariah's mother, Deborah, raised her alone with grit and pride. Selena was the golden child, the daughter from the real marriage, as people in their family whispered. Selena got the luxury schools, ballet recitals, expensive birthdays. Zariah got excuses. Their paths didn't cross much. When they did, Selena made sure the air stayed thick. She once told Zariah at 16, "If I wanted your life, I'd take it. But I don't." Zariah never forgot that. So when she saw that Selena was engaged to Cole, it wasn't just heartbreak. It was déjà vu. She left Maddox and company that same week. No notice, no exit meeting, no confrontation. She emailed HR, packed after hours, left her badge and a short message, "Thank you for the opportunity." Cole never responded. But 2 days after she disappeared, Selena followed her on Instagram. No DM, just the follow, a digital smirk. Zariah blocked her. She didn't go home. She booked a one-way ticket to Atlanta, stayed with a cousin for 2 weeks, then rented a studio apartment with creaky floors and a leaking ceiling. It didn't matter. She needed air and space and time to stop loving someone who didn't fight for her. The first 6 months were a blur. Grief layered itself like winter clothes. First for her mother, then for the betrayal, then for the version of herself who still believed in happy endings. But slowly, something else emerged, a woman who could rebuild. Zariah started small. Freelance graphic gigs, logos for local shops. A referral turned into a contract turned into a brand package turned into a retainer. She bought a new desk, then a new chair, then a second-hand couch with floral print that she secretly loved. She began sleeping again. Selena still lived online, luxury posts, designer tags, power couple interviews with Cole in GQ's digital edition. Zariah muted it all, but the ache stayed. She didn't miss Cole's title or his money. She missed the way he looked at her ideas like they mattered, the way he asked questions no one else thought to ask, the quiet they shared without touching. But she never reached out, not once. She believed in letting people go who chose someone else, even if it crushed her. One night, about a year after the engagement news, she walked past a bookstore window and saw a bridal magazine with Selena on the cover. Zariah kept walking, but something snapped inside her. Not pain, not regret, freedom. For the first time, she didn't feel anything. And that was the moment she knew she was ready to start over for real. She rebranded herself, no longer Z Designs. She became Zariah Green and Company, a creative consultancy for luxury, minority-owned, and socially conscious brands. Her style was clean, edgy, soulful. Her process, personal. She worked only with founders who had real stories. She wasn't interested in empty campaigns. And within 8 months, she had built what many took 5 years to accomplish. No handouts, no shortcuts, no Cole. Still, some irony remained. Her firm was on the radar of several companies in Cole's orbit. Fashion houses, beauty brands, a tech startup he'd funded. They'd heard of Zariah. They wanted her eye, her mind. But she politely declined every request that even smelled like Maddox and Company, until one call changed everything. It was a Tuesday afternoon. She had just finished a Zoom call when her phone buzzed. Kellis, PR head at a big firm in New York. Loud laugh, loud earrings, big heart. Zariah, girl, I need you. Zariah smiled. What happened? I'm working with a nightmare account, high-pressure launch, huge client, no soul. Zariah raised a brow. You're not exactly selling it. Kellis lowered her voice. It's Cole Maddox. Silence. Zariah leaned back. You're joking. I'm not. He's rolling out a sustainability line, and it's falling flat. They need authenticity. They need someone else. Kellis cut her off. They need you. Look, I wouldn't ask if it wasn't a good deal. I don't even think Cole knows I'm calling you. But between you and me. Pause. Selena's on edge. Zariah laughed, the bitter kind. Let me guess. She's creative director now? Nope. Just his wife, with too much access and too little vision. And she hates losing control. Zariah went quiet again, then said, send the deck. She didn't agree that day, or the next. She sat with it, battled it, cursed it. Why should she help a man who stood still while she drowned? Why should she step into a room she left for her own sanity? But eventually, her reason came clear. It wasn't for Cole, or for Selena. It was for herself. Because closure doesn't always come with a final conversation. Sometimes it comes when you stand taller in front of the same people who once watched you fall. 2 weeks later, Zariah zipped up a red silk gown, twisted her braids over one shoulder, and stepped into a black car with tinted windows. Destination, the Maddox Foundation charity gala. 2 years ago, she was an intern with borrowed heels. Tonight, she was the keynote consultant, and every camera was about to find her. The ballroom sparkled like it knew power was in the room. Crystal chandeliers, velvet drapes, tables dressed in white linen, centerpieces made of blood-red roses. Photographers clicked non-stop. Everyone looked expensive, bored, or both. But when Zariah Green walked in, the air shifted. The silk red dress draped around her body like it was stitched by silence and power. Her braids swept over one shoulder, revealing collarbones that could cut glass. She wore no necklace, no ring, no hesitation. She wasn't just beautiful. She was undeniable. Eyes turned. Conversations paused. Champagne flutes froze halfway to lips. Even before Cole saw her, the crowd did. He stood on the far side of the room, shaking hands with board members, sipping whiskey, with the kind of practiced detachment CEOs learn after a decade in corner offices. He looked thinner, slightly more tired, still polished. He didn't see her at first, but Selina did. Across the room, Zariah felt the stare before she even turned. It was sharp, cold, calculated. Selina Green Maddox wore a gold gown that hugged her like armor. Her hair was slicked back tight, her smile strained, her diamond wedding ring positioned perfectly for every photo. The smile she wore when she saw Zariah, it cracked, just for a second. Zariah didn't flinch, didn't blink. She simply nodded once, not as a hello but as a warning. Then she turned away. She had work to do. An assistant guided her to the prep room, where last-minute speaker notes were being reviewed. Kellis greeted her with a huge grin. "You just shook the room and haven't said a word yet," she whispered. Zariah smirked. "Good." She scanned the event plan. Cole would open the gala. She would follow with the core brand message reveal, and then a panel discussion would close the night. Professional, clean, no unnecessary mingling. At least, that was the plan. 10 minutes before the program began, a knock hit the door. Kellis opened it, then turned back, eyes wide. "It's him." Zariah didn't move. Cole stepped inside, alone. No camera, no PR team. "Hi." Zariah closed the folder in her hands slowly. "Cole." His voice was quieter than she remembered. "You look prepared," she cut in. "That's what you were going to say, right?" A long pause. "Can we talk?" Zariah tilted her head. "Now? I wasn't sure if you'd come. Why wouldn't I?" "It's work." He didn't respond. She waited a beat longer, then looked him dead in the eye. "Let's keep it that way." She turned and walked toward the stage entrance. Cole stood alone in the quiet. When she stepped on stage, the room softened. The lighting hit her right. Her voice carried. In a world full of empty brand stories and hollow statements, she began. "We forget that people don't connect with perfection. They connect with pain, with progress, with purpose." She moved with poise. Her voice calm, her delivery exact. "But if you want people to trust your story has to have a heartbeat." There was a pause, and then applause. Not polite clapping, real, resonant approval. Cole clapped too, slower than the rest. Selina didn't move. Backstage, after her segment, the creative board circled her like moths to flame. "You nailed that. Are you available for quarterly strategy? Who's your agent?" Zariah smiled, nodding, grateful. But her eyes flicked across the room, landing on one person. Cole. He stood back, watching, unreadable. And next to him, Selina, locked at his arm, smile wide but eyes like ice. The after-party was hosted on the rooftop. Music, champagne, rooftop fire pits, influencers posing near branded displays. Zariah planned to stay only 30 minutes. That was until Selina cornered her by the bar. "Bold of you to show up," she said, swirling her glass. Zariah blinked once. "Bold of you to act like I wasn't invited." Selina sipped. Cole was surprised. "You know that, right?" "He didn't know you'd be here. Does he need your permission to be surprised?" Selina's nostrils flared. "You think this is revenge?" Zariah's face didn't move. "No, Selina. I think this is closure." Selina's smirk cracked again. "You always play the victim." Zariah leaned in. "You always play the winner." Funny how we both left with nothing, and with that, she walked away. Cole caught her at the elevator. "Zariah." She turned. "I need to explain." She shook her head. "You don't owe me that." "I do." "No," she said softly. eyes steady. You married her, Cole. And I didn't force you to. He looked broken for a second. Not visibly, but his voice dipped low, like it carried weight he couldn't drop. I reached out when your mom passed. Zariah's breath hitched. What? I texted. I emailed. I even tried calling. She stared at him. I never got any of it. Selena told me. You didn't want to talk. Zariah's mind started spinning. Pieces moving too fast. She blinked again. So you believed her? She cut him off. Have a good night, Cole. The elevator doors opened, and she stepped inside. He didn't follow. Back in her hotel room, Zariah sat on the edge of the bed. Her phone buzzed. A new email. Subject line, our campaign needs you. Let's talk next steps. From the Maddox board. She didn't reply. She just stared at the city lights beyond the window. She had walked into their world tonight, and somehow, without screaming, without begging, she had turned their perfect picture sideways. Zariah was 7 the first time she understood what it meant to be the other daughter. She sat in the back seat of her mother's Toyota Corolla, watching the taillights of a luxury SUV pull away in front of them. Inside that SUV sat Selena, fresh from ballet lessons with a private tutor waiting at home and a father who took her shopping on Sundays. Zariah's father never looked back through the rearview mirror, never noticed the girl he'd kissed on the cheek like a favor and left standing beside the woman he never married. Her mother, Deborah, always tried to soften it. He does what he can, she'd say. But even at 7, Zariah knew better. He did what he wanted, and what he wanted was not them. Selena Green was beautiful. Light-skinned, long curls, sharp eyes. She walked like she was born for rooms with chandeliers and spoke like applause followed her. Zariah? Brown-skinned, quiet, sharp in ways no one celebrated. She didn't steal rooms. She studied them. Where Selena glided, Zariah watched her back. Their lives ran parallel but never crossed until high school when their father insisted they both attend a fundraiser dinner at his firm. That was the first time Selena made Zariah feel invisible on purpose. I like your dress, Zariah had said, small and hopeful. Selena looked her up and down, fake smile in place. It's Chanel. You probably wouldn't know. Zariah had nodded, swallowed it. But something settled deep in her that night. A truth. Selena didn't want a sister. She wanted an audience. Over the years, they were polite when forced to share space. Holidays, funerals, a few awkward birthdays. Selena's world revolved around image, Zariah's around quiet integrity. Their father never bridged the gap. He funded Selena's college, business wardrobe, and internship in Europe. Zariah worked part-time at a bookstore and earned a partial scholarship through essays no one read but her mother. They were sisters in DNA, not devotion. Zariah learned to stop expecting things. No surprise visits, no heartfelt apologies, no grand gesture of connection. She was raised by a woman who taught her how to pour from her own cup, even if no one filled it for her. And it made her resilient, but it also made her lonely. So when Zariah met Cole Maddox, she didn't expect anything from him either. She didn't expect him to remember her name, didn't expect him to ask about her design logic, didn't expect him to notice when she stayed late or skipped lunch. And when he did, it felt dangerous. Not because she didn't trust him, but because she knew who her sister was, and she knew what Selena did to people Zariah admired. Still, she told herself Cole was different. He didn't run in the same social circles. He seemed to notice Zariah for reasons that had nothing to do with comparison. But she forgot the rule that had never failed her. If Selena wants something, and you have it, she'll take it. Not always because she wants it, but because you do. Zariah had always been cautious around her sister, but when Cole appeared on Selena's Instagram, tagged in a blurry group photo at a rooftop event, her stomach tightened. She didn't ask questions. She didn't start drama. But something in her shifted. 2 weeks later, when Selena invited her for brunch just to catch up, Zariah almost declined. She should have. The table was set for 2. Selena wore a white pantsuit like she was walking a runway. They made small talk. Zariah stayed guarded, until Selena leaned in and said it, casually, smoothly, like she was discussing the weather. "So, I've been seeing someone. You might know him. Cole Maddox?" Zariah's hands froze around her water glass. Selena watched her face with silent glee. Zariah nodded once. "You always liked CEOs." Selena shrugged. "He's attentive." She smiled like a wolf in Prada. Zariah didn't react. Not fully, but she went home and cried for the first time in months. From that day, the unraveling began. Zariah became colder, more distant. Even before her mother's health worsened, she buried herself in work, trying not to imagine what Selena said to Cole behind closed doors. What version of Zariah she painted. When her mother died, Zariah collapsed into grief, but not before wondering, once, late at night, did he even try to reach out? Or had he already chosen the sister with the easier story? After the engagement announcement, there were no words left. Zariah left the company, left the city, left the parts of herself that still believed in, maybe, she would rebuild, and she would do it alone. Grief doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't knock politely or wait for you to finish a project. It barges in, uninvited, and takes over everything. Your appetite, your focus, your voice. For Zariah, grief came wrapped in silence. After her mother passed, she stopped speaking unless she had to. Emails were short, calls were ignored. Her world shrank to what she could control. Her work, her breathing, her tears when no one was around. She didn't attend the funeral reception, couldn't stomach hearing she's in a better place from people who'd never sat through chemo appointments or watched the strongest woman she knew shrink into hospital gowns. Cole didn't show up. No card, no flowers, no message, nothing. Zariah didn't expect him to bring comfort, but she didn't expect complete silence either, especially not after what they'd shared, the nights brainstorming in empty boardrooms. The way he'd once told her, "You have a way of making everything feel less heavy." So when the silence stretched into days, then weeks, she made a decision. She would never wait for closure again. Not from men, not from family, not from anyone. Zariah left the company on a Thursday night without fanfare. She cleared her desk in under 30 minutes, deleted every file with Cole's initials on it, turned in her badge and keycard to the front desk, didn't even bother emailing HR a goodbye. The city lights blurred behind her Uber window as she stared at the skyline one last time. Everything looked familiar. Everything felt foreign. She arrived in Atlanta with one suitcase, one laptop, and one rule: you rebuild, or you disappear. At first, it felt like punishment. The nights were the hardest. Sleep came in short, cold bursts. She kept her mother's voice message saved, the one that said, "Don't work so hard, baby. Take care of yourself." She played it every night, sometimes twice. Money was tight, but Zariah never begged. She found short-term design gigs on freelancer sites, logos for clothing brands, flyers for barbershops, podcast covers, small work, underpaid work. But it paid rent. She didn't chase perfection. She chased survival. One client told her, "You got an eye. I feel like you hear what my brand's trying to say." That sentence stuck. She started asking more questions during projects, digging into founder stories, finding the heartbeat behind businesses most people ignored. Before long, clients started referring her to friends, then friends of friends. Zariah wasn't just designing, she was helping people find their voice, something she was still searching for herself. Social media became her portfolio. No selfies, no filters, no life updates, just raw before and after brand makeovers. Color studies, typography breakdowns. Her captions weren't trendy or chirpy, they were honest. This brand lost their dad to cancer. Their story deserved better than a stock logo. She used to cry when talking about her product. Now she cries because people believe in it. People noticed. Clients came. Consistency followed. She rented a small studio, barely 500 square feet, but it had natural light and creaky wood floors that reminded her of childhood. She called it the quiet room. It became her sanctuary. Still, certain wounds refused to close. She'd see a headline about Cole's company breaking new ground in clean fashion, or a photo of Selena at some gala, wrapped in jewels that sparkled like her fake smile. Each time, Zariah would feel the old anger stir, but she never typed his name, never clicked on hers. She didn't need that kind of poison in her bloodstream. Her mother's voice stayed with her, not just in the saved voicemail, but in the little things, like the way Zariah folded her scarves, or the way she made tea when anxious, or the way she still hummed that one gospel tune without realizing it. She wasn't trying to move on from the grief. She was learning to carry it better. One day, a message came through her business email. Subject, possible branding contract. Referral from Lila Dennis. Zariah opened it, skimming the details. It was from a PR executive, looking for help with a client's upcoming campaign. Corporate, high profile, needs emotional storytelling. She kept reading, until she saw the name, Maddox and Company. She almost deleted the email. Instead, she stared at it, frozen. Lila Dennis, her old client, must have shared her work, unaware, innocent, no clue about the history. Zariah sat with it for an hour. Then she archived the email. No response. Not yet. That night, she had a dream. She was standing in a glass building. Everything clear, fragile, sharp. Selena walked through it like she owned the place. Cole followed. Neither of them noticed the cracks forming in the floor. Zariah stood still. She didn't warn them. She didn't run. She just watched. And when the glass beneath them shattered, she was the only one left standing. Zariah woke up in a sweat. She didn't know if it was a nightmare or a prophecy. Growth didn't come with a finish line. For Zariah, it came slowly, like rain softening dry ground. Not dramatic, not overnight, but steady. The pain of her past didn't vanish, but it stopped owning her. One morning, she opened her laptop and deleted every old file labeled Z Designs, every project from her intern days, every logo that reminded her of Cole, every rough draft created during her grief. Gone. In their place, a folder titled Zariah Green and Company. She was no longer hiding behind a nickname, no longer shrinking her name to be palatable. She was stepping into it, fully. Her first major client under the new name was a wellness startup founded by a black woman who'd lost her brother to gun violence. Zariah didn't design her logo first. She listened. They met in a park. No briefcases, just stories, pain, dreams, visions for change. Zariah sketched ideas on napkins and old receipts. That session turned into a powerful visual identity that made the brand go viral. It wasn't luck. It was alignment. Word spread. Zariah Green became a name people whispered in creative circles. She doesn't just design. She builds emotional DNA. She sees what your story should feel like. Soon, luxury brands came knocking, not the cold, surface ones, the ones desperate for authenticity. Zariah said no more than she said yes, and each no built her confidence. She hired her first assistant, a film grad named Carmen with neon green hair and a love for photography. Then brought on a freelance strategist, Marcus, who had worked in political campaigns and understood narrative tension. Together, they formed a small, fierce team. They didn't care about being big. They cared about being honest. Zariah's studio evolved too. She repainted the walls a deep terracotta, added plants in every corner, bought a speaker and played jazz while working. Her mother's favorite quilt hung on the back of her desk chair. It wasn't a fancy space, but it felt like her. Clients walked in and always said the same thing. Something about this place feels calm. That was the point. She refused to hire a publicist. Let the work speak. Let the results travel. Still, her name ended up on industry lists. Top 10 designers changing brand identity in the South. One to watch. Zariah Green. She didn't repost them. Didn't need the applause. But she kept screenshots in a hidden album on her phone. for the days when doubt returned. Selena's name faded from her daily thoughts. Most days, Zariah didn't even think of her. But sometimes, while scrolling her inbox or flipping past a fashion magazine, she'd catch the name Maddox and freeze. She trained herself not to react, because power, she learned, isn't always in the comeback. Sometimes, it's in the restraint. Then came the call from Kellis. That was the shift, the test. Kellis had followed her work for months. They met at a networking event, exchanged numbers, then nothing, for a while. Until that call, until that pitch, until she said the name, Cole Maddox. Zariah didn't flinch, but she felt the air go colder. "You're the only person who can fix this brand launch," Kellis had said. Zariah leaned back in her office chair. "Does he know you're calling me?" "No, not yet." Zariah looked out the window. "That's a problem." Kellis didn't push. She just said, "He needs story, he needs credibility. And whether he knows it or not, he needs you." Zariah could have hung up, but instead she whispered, "Email me the deck." 2 days passed. Zariah stared at the brief but didn't open it. The name on the PDF file stared back, Maddox Sustainability Rollout. Attached, Cole's signature. Her hands hovered over the trackpad. Old feelings stirred, not desire, not pain, but something quieter. Readiness. She opened the file. What she found was bland. The visuals were sleek, the words polished, but the story, empty. It felt like something put together by a man trying to look evolved, not a man who actually was. Zariah frowned. The Cole she once knew wouldn't have let something so hollow pass his desk. Unless he'd stopped caring. Or worse, he'd started hiding. That night, she had a quiet talk with herself. "You're not the intern anymore," she whispered. "You're the standard." So she said yes. Not to prove anything, not to rekindle old wounds, but to finally look her past in the eye and see if it still held power. She lost everything, her mother, her career, her peace. But she chose to rebuild, not revenge. Have you ever walked away from people who didn't fight for you? Have you ever had to start over with nothing but your name and your will? Zariah didn't wait for an apology. She became the apology they'd regret never giving. Drop a comment if you've ever had to rebuild yourself from the ground up. Type "I owe no one closure" if you believe peace is better than payback. And if you're rooting for Zariah's rise, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. The email subject line was simple: Partnership Proposal, Q4 Campaign Strategy. Zariah almost archived it on site. Her inbox had been flooded since her last feature in a creative magazine, and most messages came from brands wanting her aesthetic, not her intention. But something about the sender made her pause. Kellis Marks, Senior Brand Strategist, KRM Group. She knew that name. Kellis was loud in rooms most people whispered in. She ran campaigns with edge. She worked with people who weren't afraid to tell the truth. And more importantly, Kellis didn't beg. She only reached out when she knew the answer was already yes. Zariah opened the email. "Zariah, I won't waste your time. I'm running point on a rebrand that should have never launched without you. I've attached the brief, but if you want the short version, it's Cole. Yes, that Cole. Maddox and Company is finally pivoting to sustainability, and it's soulless. Looks good, but it's hollow. They don't need pretty. They need heart. I've watched how you move. You don't chase headlines. You create impact. I won't push. But if you're open, let's talk." And Kellis. Zariah stared at the message. Cole. His name didn't sting as much as she expected. It didn't punch her chest or stir old fantasies. It just landed, soft, weightless. She clicked the attachment. The presentation was glossy, well-designed, but she knew immediately. It had no pulse. The brand colors were on trend. The mission statement used all the right words: community, earth, circular fashion, empowerment. But nowhere in the slides was why it mattered. There was no story, no soul. Zariah leaned back in her chair. 2 years ago, she would have thrown her laptop across the room. A year ago, she would have cried. 6 months ago, she would have laughed bitterly and deleted the email. But now, she was different. The next morning, she replied with 4 words, "Send me the call link." When Kellis appeared on Zoom, she had pink hair and a leopard print blazer. "Girl, took you long enough." Zariah smirked. "You're lucky I was bored. Please, you read that deck twice." Zariah didn't deny it. Kellis leaned in. "Look, I'm not gonna lie. This isn't just about saving a campaign. It's about saving face. Maddox needs this launch to reposition after that merger tanked last quarter. But Cole, he's lost the human touch. He's too perfect now, sterile. People don't trust that anymore." Zariah raised a brow. "And Selena?" Kellis's lips tightened. "Still up in everything. But she's not officially involved. I don't think she wanted this campaign to begin with." Zariah folded her arms. "So why me?" Kellis grinned. "Because she'd hate it, and because you'd fix it. Not because of drama, but because you build things that feel." Zariah exhaled slowly. "You sure he's ready to work with me again?" "No," Kellis said flatly. "But I am," she agreed, not to spite anyone, not to stir anything, but because the work mattered, and because her story deserved to return on her own terms. The first day back in the Maddox building didn't feel how she thought it would. No tremble in her legs, no quickened heartbeat, just memories lining the hallways like old wallpaper, easy to ignore if you didn't look too close. The receptionist was new. No one gave her a second glance. That alone reminded her how much had changed. She was escorted to a glass conference room overlooking the city skyline. Inside, the entire brand team sat waiting. At the head of the table, Cole Maddox. He rose as she entered. Black suit, white shirt, no tie, neat beard. Same eyes. Except they didn't hold the same certainty they once did. More like a question that had been waiting 2 years for an answer. "Zariah," he said. "Cole," she replied. Calm. She sat. He sat. The meeting began. She stayed professional, broke down his campaign slide by slide. "Your message lacks anchor," she said. "You're talking about the environment, but what's your emotional currency? What's the personal investment?" One executive chimed in, "We're targeting Gen Z. They care about climate." Zariah raised a hand. "Gen Z cares about truth, not angles, not keywords. If your brand doesn't live it, they'll cancel it before your launch ends." Cole said nothing, but he never looked away. After the meeting, Cole stopped her outside the elevator. "Can I speak with you?" She turned to him, expression blank. "We just did. Outside of work." She crossed her arms. "Why?" "I just want to know if you're okay." Zariah blinked. Slowly. "It's been 2 years. That question expired. I tried to reach out when you married her, Cole." He paused. "You think I didn't care?" "I don't think about what you feel anymore," she said softly. The elevator dinged. She stepped inside. He didn't follow. Back at her studio, Carmen greeted her with a question. "How'd it go?" Zariah peeled off her coat. "Like walking through fire in fireproof shoes." Carmen raised a brow. "Meaning?" "I didn't burn, but I remember how it felt." That night, she laid awake, not from heartbreak, but from awareness. She hadn't flinched, hadn't cried, hadn't broken. She was standing in the same room where she once lost everything, and she wasn't the same woman anymore. Across town, in a penthouse bedroom, Cole poured a glass of scotch and stared out at the skyline. Selena walked in without knocking. She looked healthy, she said. Cole didn't turn. "Was that your doing? Inviting her back?" He shook his head. "No." "You sure?" She pushed. He finally looked at her. "No one invites Zariah. She chooses when to show up." Selena scoffed. "You really think she's not here to get back at us?" Cole turned away. If she wanted revenge, she'd already have it. Zariah didn't want revenge. She wanted clarity, and now that she had it, the real story could begin. The second week back at Maddox and Company was quieter. Zariah's face no longer turned heads. The staff had accepted her presence. Some looked curious. A few even looked respectful. But no one dared ask questions. They didn't need to. The tension between her and Cole lived in the space between words. It was clean, controlled, and unreadable, unless you knew where to look. Zariah focused on the work. She rebuilt the campaign's entire emotional foundation, grounding it in real-world impact. She brought in a community founder from Flint to speak about water justice, sourced recycled textiles from a black-owned supplier in Louisiana, scrapped the sterile ad copy and rewrote it into something that pulsed with honesty. She didn't need Cole's approval, but she got it. In nods, in stillness, in how often he chose to sit in meetings he normally skipped. Late one afternoon, Zariah stayed behind to rework the final rollout plan. Everyone else had cleared out, except for him. She knew he was still there. She heard his door open behind her, but she kept typing. "Do you hate me?" his voice asked from the doorway. She didn't turn. "I don't feel anything strong enough to be called hate." Silence. "Then do you miss me?" She stopped typing. "That's not a fair question. It's not meant to be." Zariah finally turned. "You're married. I filed 6 weeks ago." Her eyes narrowed. "Divorce?" He nodded. "Selena doesn't know." Zariah stood slowly, arms folded. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I don't want you thinking I'm asking for something while still tied to someone." "I wasn't." Another pause. Then he said the one thing that unthreaded her composure. "I wrote to you. Every day. After your mother passed. She deleted every message." Zariah's breath caught. "You're lying." "I swear I'm not. I found out months later. I tried calling again, but you changed your number. Because I thought you abandoned me." "I never did." Her voice broke, quiet and trembling. "But you married her." He took a step closer. "Because I was angry, hurt. I thought you shut me out. I thought I meant nothing." Zariah's eyes burned. She knew. She knew exactly what she was doing. "She always has," Cole said bitterly. "But I didn't want to see it." Zariah held his gaze. "And now you do. I see you." That night, Zariah walked home under the weight of that sentence. Not with hope, not with longing, but with a strange ache she hadn't felt in years. Possibility. 3 days later, the campaign launched. It went viral within hours, not because of celebrity endorsements or paid ads, but because people felt the difference. Real stories, real partnerships, real purpose. The public didn't just clap, they believed. And Cole gave her the credit, publicly. On stage, in front of cameras, he said, "None of this would have been possible without Zariah Green. She didn't just build a campaign. She restored our company's integrity." Zariah stood still beside him. Graceful, silent. She didn't need the spotlight, but she owned the room anyway. After the event, she stepped outside alone. The air was cool. The city hummed around her. She didn't hear footsteps behind her, but she knew they were his. "You said you didn't miss me," Cole said gently. "I didn't say that," she replied. He waited. She turned to him. "I missed who I thought you were." He nodded. "And now? I don't know who you are anymore. Would you let me show you?" Zariah blinked. "I'm not Selena," she said quietly. "I know. I don't fall for titles. I don't fall for charm. I fall for presence." "I'm here," he said. "Not tonight." She took a step back. "Let me come to you. When I know you're someone who won't disappear again." Later, in her studio, she pulled out an old journal. The first page had a note from her mother. "Don't be afraid to start over. It might be the story that saves you." She didn't cry. She smiled. For the first time in years, the story was finally hers again. Zariah didn't see Cole for 3 weeks. Not in meetings, not in passing, not even in headlines. The campaign had gone live, gained traction, and quietly changed the narrative around Maddox and company. But Cole, he'd stepped back, just like he promised. And in the silence, Zariah began to breathe again. She threw herself into new work. a partnership with a social impact startup in Chicago, a brand overhaul for a natural skincare line run by a single mother, and, most personally, a local mentorship initiative for high school girls who wanted to pursue design but didn't know where to start. The media requests piled up. People wanted to know how she'd completely redirected a billion-dollar brand with nothing but soul. She declined every interview. I don't need to be viral. I need to be valuable. That became her new policy. But in quiet moments, walking home with groceries, folding laundry, brushing her teeth, Cole's words would surface like a whisper. I never stopped writing you. She deleted everything. I see you now. Zariah didn't want to admit it, but a question had formed in her chest. What if he was telling the truth? One Saturday morning, she found herself holding the envelope again. It had arrived 2 weeks ago. Plain, unbranded, handwritten. Inside, a single page. No return address, no signature. Just a note. I won't send emails. I won't show up uninvited. But if you want to read the letters, I kept them. All of them. They're in my study. The key is still in the same place. She knew what he meant. There was a hidden compartment in the base of the stone planter outside his townhouse. He used it to store an extra key, a fact he once told her during a conversation about home security. She remembered laughing and saying, "That's such a terrible hiding spot." He'd grinned. Only if someone's looking. Now she was wondering if she'd go looking. Zariah didn't believe in unfinished business. She liked clean breaks, clear lines. But this didn't feel clean. It felt unanswered. That night she visited her mother's grave. She sat cross-legged on the grass, hands resting in her lap, talking to the air. I don't know what I'm supposed to do, Mama. I don't know if seeing those letters is healing or reopening something I already buried. A breeze lifted the edge of her scarf. She imagined her mother saying, "You don't have to trust him, but trust yourself." The next day, she went. Cole's townhouse hadn't changed. Same dark brick, same quiet street, same black iron gate with the sticky latch. Zariah stood outside the planter for a moment, hands trembling, heart calm. She reached under. The key was still there. The house was clean, untouched. She stepped inside like she didn't belong there, even though she had once stood barefoot. In this same foyer, laughing at the echo of her own voice against the high ceilings, she walked past the living room, past the wine wall, into the study. The bookshelf still held her favorite copy of The Bluest Eye that she once made him read. The scent was still cedar and mint. And the drawer? Still locked. She knelt, inserted the key. It clicked. Inside were stacks of handwritten letters. Dozens. Some pages folded. Some in envelopes. Some written on hotel stationery. Some with tear marks. She sat in the study chair and pulled out the first one. Dear Zariah, I don't know what to say that doesn't sound like an excuse. I'm angry, I'm hurt, and I miss you. I don't understand why you cut me off when I was trying to be there for you. Selena said you didn't want to talk. She said you didn't care. I didn't want to believe it. But I did, and now I'm ashamed of that. Her eyes blurred. She opened the next. I should have known better. You don't disappear for no reason, and I should have fought harder. If this gets to you one day, please know I never chose her over you. I just thought you already left me. Letter after letter. His voice unfolded. Pages from cities around the world, Seoul, Berlin, Boston, Nairobi. Words full of regret, of guilt, of things he never had the chance to say. 2 hours passed. Zariah didn't stop reading, not until she reached the final note. This is the last one I'll write. If you never read them, that's okay. If you do, maybe one day you'll understand why I stopped showing up. Not because I stopped caring, but because I was trying to respect your silence. I never wanted to disappear. I just didn't know if I still had a place in your world. She folded the letter gently. Her world. She hadn't even realized she'd built one, without him. And yet, a part of her had always wondered if he would have tried harder if he knew the truth. She left the house quietly, the key tucked back in its hiding place. As she reached the sidewalk, Cole's car turned the corner. He saw her, slowed, then stopped. Neither moved for a full 10 seconds. Zariah gave him a small nod. Not a wave, not a welcome, just an acknowledgement. Then she walked away. Back at her studio, Carmen looked up. "You good?" Zariah nodded. "I think so." "Did you see him?" "No." "Did you want to?" She paused. "Not yet." That night, Zariah journaled for the first time in months. She wrote, "Closure isn't always about slamming a door. Sometimes it's standing in the same room with new strength and knowing you get to walk out when you're ready." Zariah had read every letter. She had felt the weight of each word. But she hadn't called him. Not the next day. Not the day after that. Not even the following week. Some might call it avoidance. She called it protection. Healing didn't mean pretending the past didn't happen. It meant remembering who you were before it broke you, and choosing not to return to the version of yourself that begged for clarity. So instead of chasing old ghosts, Zariah showed up for herself. She poured into her mentees. She redesigned her website to reflect her new voice. She launched a scholarship fund in her mother's name for young black girls in the arts. And quietly, privately, she kept rereading one letter in particular. "You don't fall in love the way most people do, Zariah. You become it. Every moment, every word, every silence, it's all deliberate. That's what made losing you feel like losing gravity." One evening, while editing a pitch deck in her studio, Carmen poked her head in. "You have a visitor." Zariah looked up. "Client?" Carmen hesitated. "Not exactly." Zariah stood slowly, pulse steady, but her voice softer. "Did he say his name?" "He didn't need to." Cole stood outside, hands in his pockets, no coat despite the cold, no bouquet, no dramatic monologue, just a quiet presence. Zariah stepped outside, arms folded. "You're not supposed to be here." "I know. I didn't ask you to come." "You didn't have to." Silence. He looked at her like he'd forgotten what breath was. "I'm not here to ask for anything," he said. I wanted to say thank you." She raised a brow. "For what?" "For reading them." She tilted her head. "You don't know that I did." His voice dropped. "I know you." Another silence. Then he said, "I also wanted to say sorry for everything." "You've already said that." "Not in person." Zariah studied him. This wasn't the Cole she once worked late with. Not the one she watched laugh in boardrooms or whisper jokes under his breath. This was a man humbled, stripped, standing not as a CEO, but as a man who had finally stopped hiding behind function and pride. "You're divorcing her," Zariah said. He nodded. "It's not about you. I need that to be clear." "Then why tell me?" "Because if I'm building a better life, I need to be honest with the person who made me want one." Zariah's throat tightened. "I'm not waiting for you," she said flatly. "I know. I'm not making space for anything less than presence." "I'm here," he said. "But I'll leave if that's what you want." She paused. Then quietly, "Come in, just for tea." They sat across from each other in her studio kitchen. Steam rose between them. She poured chamomile. No sugar, no honey, just warmth. Cole looked around. "You painted last month. It suits you." She sipped. "Don't do that." "What?" "Try to slide back in like it's normal." "I'm not. I'm just existing." She studied him for a long moment. "Why me?" she asked suddenly. He didn't flinch. "Because even at my best, I was never better than when I was trying to earn your respect." Zariah swallowed hard. "You said you stopped showing up because you were respecting my silence." "I was scared." "Of what?" "That I was the kind of man who could hurt someone like you and still sleep at night." "Could you?" "No," he said softly, "but I pretended to, until I couldn't anymore." The tea cooled. The quiet lingered, and then Zariah said, "You can visit again. But don't come empty. Bring truth, bring peace, bring the man who wrote those letters, not the one who needed to be chased to say sorry." Cole nodded. "I will." He left without touching her. without asking for a second chance. And for the first time since she met him, Zariah felt a future that wasn't tied to what they were, but to who they were becoming. 3 weeks passed. He didn't show up again. Not once, but he did send a package, a brown box, no branding. Inside, a journal, leather-bound, and a handwritten note on the first page. I've stopped writing letters. I'm writing myself instead. And if these pages turn into someone you'd want to sit next to one day, I'll be right where you left me. Zariah placed the journal on her shelf, not to read, but to know it was there. Some wounds don't close with closure. Some heal with quiet, with presence, with choice. And Zariah? She was finally choosing herself. First, Zariah didn't believe in coincidences. So when a message from a Maddox and Company legal assistant showed up in her inbox marked confidential, she knew something wasn't right. She clicked the email cautiously, reading each line with growing unease. Per company policy, as a key contributor to the fourth quarter sustainability campaign, you are entitled to access internal creative and legal records involving your intellectual contributions. Due to recent internal audit requests, a physical document connected to your early work, 2019 to 2020, has been located under sealed materials previously owned by Mrs. Selina Green Maddox. Zariah frowned. Why would anything from Selina involve her early work? Then came the line that stopped her breath. The document in question includes revisions made under a restricted login attached to your former company profile, later transferred under Selina Green Maddox's name without authorization. She stared at the screen. For a moment, she thought maybe she misunderstood, but rereading it confirmed her suspicion. Selina had taken something of hers, and someone inside the company had just uncovered it. A meeting was scheduled. Private, off-record, held inside Cole's personal study at his private office downtown, not at Maddox headquarters. Kellis texted her directly that night. I didn't know, I swear. But you deserve to see what she did. I'll be there if you want backup. Zariah didn't respond. She didn't need backup. She needed answers. The next afternoon, she arrived 5 minutes early. The assistant escorted her into Cole's study, smaller than she remembered. Dark wood, warm lighting, still smelled faintly of his cologne. He stood when she entered. Thank you for coming, he said. She nodded once. He gestured toward the desk. A large file folder sat between them. He slid it to her slowly. No cameras, no recordings. This is for you. Only you. She opened it. Inside were printed versions of campaign drafts, ones she had worked on during her internship years ago. At first, she didn't see the issue. Then her eyes landed on a logo. Her logo. The original design she submitted in 2019 for a sustainability concept, long before the company had even considered it seriously. She flipped pages. Notes in the margins. Color palettes, she remembered. Even a tagline. Handwritten in red ink. Her handwriting. But beneath it, a signature that didn't belong to her. Selina Green Maddox. Zariah felt heat rise to her face. She kept flipping. Faster now. Brand identity pitch decks, mood boards, vision statements, her work. Every bit of it. Stamped, repackaged, reworded, signed off as if Selina had created it from scratch. Cole sat silently across from her, watching the realization unfold. Zariah finally looked up. When? Shortly after you left the company. She accessed my files. He nodded once. She used your work to position herself for a board seat she never qualified for. She claimed you had abandoned the ideas, that she developed them in your absence. Zariah leaned back in the chair, and for the first time in a long time, her anger didn't come quietly. She didn't just take my man, Cole. She took my mind. Cole looked at her. No excuses in his eyes. Just shame. I didn't know. And that's not me shifting blame. I should have looked deeper. I should have questioned how suddenly she had a voice in rooms she never cared about. Zariah shut the folder. That campaign made millions, not because of pretty fonts, but because of that story. My story. My mother. That vision. I know, Cole said. That's why the board offered a private settlement. To avoid press. Zariah's laugh was bitter. They want me to be quiet. No, he said gently. They want to make it right. I want to make it right. Zariah stood up slowly. I don't want their money. Cole stood too. Then, what do you want? She stared at him. I want her name removed from every creative record she didn't author. I want my credits restored, retroactively, and I want a public acknowledgement from you, not for validation, for truth. Cole nodded once. Done. Zariah didn't stay for small talk. As she turned to leave, Cole said softly, she always envied your ability to build something from nothing. Zariah paused at the door. She could have built something too, Cole, but instead, she decided she'd rather steal mine. That night, Zariah returned to her studio in silence. Carmen noticed her stillness, but didn't pry. Zariah simply walked to her whiteboard, erased her current launch calendar, and wrote in thick marker, Power doesn't beg. It remembers. The next morning, Zariah emailed Kellis. We're not going to court. We're going public. Get the release ready. The press release dropped on a Tuesday morning. No drama, no scandal, just a short, direct statement. Effective immediately, all creative materials previously credited to Selena Green Maddox under the 2019 to 2020 campaign records have been corrected to reflect the rightful originator, Zariah Green. Maddox and Company recognizes her pioneering contributions to the brand's sustainability strategy and the impact of her early designs. We regret the oversight and take full responsibility for the misattribution. C. Maddox, founder and CEO. It went viral by noon, not because of the name Maddox, but because Zariah didn't repost it. She let the truth speak for itself. No subtweets, no victory dance, no interviews, only a quiet update to her portfolio website. Truth doesn't need volume, it just needs to exist. But inside her, something deeper was rising. She couldn't ignore the gnawing thought. How many of Cole's decisions back then had been based on lies? And how many had been based on convenience? A week after the release, he showed up at her studio again. This time, he brought nothing. No files, no gifts, no promises. Just a simple question. Can we talk? Zariah set her tablet down. She didn't smile, didn't frown. Talk. Cole sat across from her. His posture didn't scream confidence anymore. It whispered humility. I don't want to erase what happened, but I want to be transparent about what I ignored. Zariah folded her arms. Ignored? I saw red flags, Zariah. I saw the way she mirrored your language, your designs, even your phrasing in meetings. But I rationalized it. Why? He hesitated. Because Selena was the safe option. The one who never challenged me. The one who looked good beside me in press photos. Zariah's eyes didn't waver. So I was what? The risk? No, he said quietly. You were the standard, and I didn't believe I deserved you. That admission landed hard, because part of her had always wondered. Had she been used as a ladder? As a stepping stone? Or as a real possibility? Now, hearing this, that he once saw her as too much to keep, felt like being rebroken in a different way. Zariah sat with a silence before she spoke. You talk like someone seeking redemption. I'm not, Cole said. I'm seeking understanding. I'm building the version of myself that should have shown up 2 years ago. And where does that leave us? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached into his coat and pulled out something small, a sketchbook, one she'd gifted him when they first worked together. I found this in my drawer last month. You gave it to me with a note I didn't read at the time. He handed it to her. Zariah opened the first page. Her handwriting greeted her. For the man who sees the surface, but has yet to look deeper. If you ever do, I hope you see me there. Zariah closed the sketchbook. She set it aside, and she asked the one question she had buried under maturity, silence, and self-worth. Was I ever someone you chose, or was I just the first person to remind you you could feel something real? Cole looked at her. No defenses, no speeches. I didn't know what choosing someone meant, until I lost the chance to. She stared at him. That's not good enough. I know, he whispered. But I'm not here for enough anymore. I'm here for truth. Even if it doesn't get me anything. Zariah stood. Then let's start with this. You don't get to rebuild with me just because you're ready. This isn't a rescue plan. I'm not your second draft. And I'm not a prize to be reclaimed after you've cleaned up your history. Cole nodded. I'm not asking for you. He stood too. I'm asking if I can deserve the chance to show up without expectation. Zariah studied him. Then, for the first time, she softened. Not into love, not into invitation, but into possibility. Maybe that was all she said. And Cole smiled, because maybe was more honest than yes. Later that night, Zariah curled up on her couch and replayed every moment in her mind. And for the first time, the question didn't echo painfully. Was I part of a rescue plan or a checklist? No, she was neither. She was the reason he had to rebuild himself from scratch, not to win her back, but to become the kind of man she'd never have to walk away from again. Zariah didn't speak to Cole for almost a month, not out of spite, not out of fear, but because she needed to hear her own voice again, without his shadow in the background. Her days moved forward in rhythm. Morning tea, studio check-ins, client meetings, mentor calls, design reviews, silence. But it wasn't an empty silence. It was intentional. It was peace. It was what she'd fought years to reclaim. She had learned that stillness wasn't a void. It was a choice. And sometimes, choosing not to fill the air with old answers gave space for new clarity to rise. Still, Cole's absence wasn't unnoticed. He didn't text, didn't send flowers, didn't ask for updates. He had taken her words seriously. He wasn't showing up to be seen. He was staying back to become someone worth knowing. One Sunday, Zariah stood in her kitchen preparing brunch when Carmen peeked in. Someone dropped this off for you. She handed her a black envelope. Zariah raised a brow. No name, no label. She opened it carefully. Inside was a single note. The garden at Ridge and Park, Saturday, 3 p.m. If not for me, then for the questions we never finished asking. No signature. But the handwriting was unmistakable. She sat with the note for 3 days, read it every morning, then set it down. She didn't owe anyone her presence, but maybe she owed herself that conversation, not to reopen wounds, but to see if they'd scarred clean. That Saturday, she arrived at the garden at 3:01 p.m. The sun filtered through the oak trees. The small fountain hummed beside a stone path. Benches lined the space in quiet symmetry. She spotted Cole near the back, in a plain grey sweater, no watch, no pretense. He looked up as she approached, didn't smile, didn't stand, just waited. She sat across from him, folded her coat across her lap. He looked down for a second, then back up. Thanks for coming. She nodded. Silence passed between them like a language only the healed could speak. I've been in therapy, he said finally. Zariah looked at him. Because of me? He shook his head. Because of me? She let that answer settle. I had to learn how much of my identity was tied to being in control. How much of my love was just performance, strategy. And Selena? She asked. I've let her go, emotionally. Legally, we're final next month. Zariah gave a small nod. I don't hate her anymore, he added. I don't admire her either. I just don't carry her with me. They sat quietly again. Zariah watched a little girl chase a butterfly between flower beds. Did you come today hoping I'd say I forgive you? No, Cole said. I hoped you'd say something true. She turned to him slowly. I don't know if I trust you, she said. But I believe you. That's enough for me. I'm not ready. I'm not rushing. I'm still healing. Then I'll stand still. Zariah looked away, her eyes glossy but steady. You've changed, she whispered. Cole breathed in. No. I've started. They sat side by side, not touching. But for the first time, no pain sat between them. No lies. No ghosts. Just stillness. And stillness, she realized, could be a kind of peace. As she stood to leave, Cole remained seated. No reach. No question. Zariah turned back once. Softly. Stillness doesn't mean I want silence forever. He looked up. I'll be here. Whenever stillness turns into something else, Zariah didn't believe in happy endings anymore. Not because she was bitter, but because she'd learned something truer. Endings don't always mean resolution. Sometimes, the story unfolds into something unexpected, softer, slower, more real. And that was enough. Weeks passed. She and Cole didn't fall into a routine. There were no good morning texts, no uninvited visits, no slow replays of what used to be. They allowed the space between them to breathe and not collapse under history. Every now and then, a package would arrive at her studio. Never flashy, always intentional. A rare book on color theory. A candle in her mother's favorite scent. A journal with the first page left blank. And a sticky note, only for thoughts you're not afraid to feel. She never responded, but she never threw anything away. One Thursday, she sent a voice note for the first time. Not long, not emotional. Just, your silence is no longer punishment. It's presence. I hear you, even when you say nothing. His reply came 2 hours later. That's the first time I've felt seen in years. Later that month, she invited him to a gallery show. Her mentee's first public exhibit. He showed up wearing the same charcoal coat he used to wear back in the office, except now it didn't look like armor. It looked like home. He stood in the back. Didn't approach her until the night was over. Didn't hover. When he did finally speak, all he said was, "You gave them what no one gave you." Zariah looked at the room. Teen girls laughing, pointing at their names on plaques. Their parents tearing up in corners. She smiled faintly. Maybe. Or maybe I became the woman I needed. Cole nodded. You did both. That night, she walked him halfway to his car. No plans, no suggestion of next time, just footsteps under city light. Before they parted, Cole paused. I don't need us to be anything right now, he said, but I'd like to be someone you trust to stand beside you, not behind you, not in front. Just beside. Zariah inhaled deeply, and in a voice firm but kind, she replied, Then don't move until I say walk. 3 months passed. They kept in touch. Occasional coffees. Quiet check-ins. The world spun on, but for once, Zariah didn't feel like she had to race with it. She didn't wonder what people thought, didn't obsess over closure. She just lived. And slowly, the parts of her that once screamed for justice softened into something gentler. Peace. Spring arrived. Her mentorship program received its first grant. She was invited to guest lecture at a design school. Cole launched a foundation in his father's name and credited her with the idea during the launch speech. When she watched the recording online, she didn't cry. She simply nodded. The man who once disappeared was finally present. One Sunday morning, Zariah sat on the porch of her studio with a journal in her lap. She was writing, not about Cole, not about pain, but about herself, about who she'd become, who she was still becoming. Carmen opened the door, holding a tiny box. This just came for you. Zariah took it slowly. Inside, a pendant, small, gold, etched with a tree, the same one they sat under at that garden. A note, I won't ask again. But if you ever want to build something steady, you already have the roots. I'll meet you in the branches. See, Zariah smiled, closed the box, held it to her chest. She wasn't ready to say yes, but she wasn't saying no. She was choosing the unfolding, not the ending. Zariah didn't expect the garden to become a ritual, but every Saturday she found herself walking the gravel path near Ridge and Park, the one where stillness had once reintroduced her to herself. It wasn't about Cole. It wasn't even about closure anymore. It was about returning to the quiet space where she first remembered her strength. But that Saturday, something was different. A small table had been placed beneath the tree, the one where they had once sat. On it, A journal, a pen, and a single magnolia bloom in a tiny glass vase. She knew what it meant. Cole had been there. She sat down without touching anything. Not to send a message, not to overthink, just to be. She'd built a life that was hers, not reactionary, not borrowed, not shaped by someone else's version of success. And now, she could sit in peace without needing answers. Across the park, Cole watched from a distance. Not because he was waiting, but because he was letting the story breathe. For the first time, he didn't feel the urge to chase her. He simply felt grateful she existed. Later that day, Zariah visited her mother's grave. She brought the journal Cole had given her and read aloud the note again. "I'll meet you in the branches." She looked up at the sky, whispered softly, "I'm still climbing." That night, she opened her inbox to find an unexpected email. Subject, speaking opportunity. Creative Resilience Summit. They wanted her to be the keynote speaker. Topic, healing through design. Finding your voice after betrayal. She reread the line and laughed under her breath. Of all the things she'd survived, heartbreak, grief, theft, her greatest triumph was learning to speak again. Not for revenge, but for herself. She said yes, not for exposure, not for accolades, but because she knew somewhere out there another version of herself, silent, broken, doubting, needed to hear that survival was possible. The night before the summit, she stood in her apartment rehearsing, mirror reflecting a woman who had come too far to water herself down. She didn't memorize lines. On stage the next day, she wore soft brown tones, natural curls, and no jewelry. Just presence. Her opening line, "You're not weak because you walked away. You're stronger because you stayed gone long enough to heal." The audience held their breath. She told them about being erased, about watching her work get repackaged, about losing love in the silence between lies. But mostly, she told them about rebuilding, about peace, about the power of not rushing to reclaim what once wounded you. In the crowd, Cole watched from the very back. No cameras, no photos, no announcement. Just a man listening to the woman who had once changed his entire sense of self. After the talk, Zariah didn't look for him. She didn't need to. He didn't come up to her, didn't ask for a moment. But she found a note folded into the bouquet waiting in her dressing room. "You gave them your story. You gave me my mirror. Whatever grows next, I want it to be watered with truth." She tucked the note into her journal, not as a promise, but as a seed. She didn't call him, but she planted the magnolia bloom from the garden on her windowsill, and every morning after that, she checked to see if it bloomed. 3 weeks passed before they spoke again. Zariah had just wrapped a mentoring session with 3 young creatives, 2 photographers and a brand designer, when her phone buzzed. Cole Maddox. She stared at the name, didn't flinch, didn't smile, just breathed, then answered. "Hey," he said, his voice calm. "I didn't want to disrupt anything." "You didn't," she replied. A pause stretched between them, but this time it wasn't awkward. It was respectful, familiar. "Can I see you?" he asked. Zariah didn't rush. "Where?" "Somewhere that doesn't remind us of anything." She thought for a moment. "There's a small lake about 30 minutes from here. Meet me there. Tomorrow." The lake was quiet, untouched, no valet, no paparazzi, no luxury touches, just water, trees, and the smell of clean air. Zariah arrived first, wearing jeans, a cardigan, and sneakers. No makeup, no armor. Cole arrived in a simple shirt and loafers. They both looked human. They walked in silence for a while. Birdsong, leaves crunching. Occasional laughs from kids nearby. No talk of the past. Until he said, "I read the letter again this morning. The one you left in the journal." Zariah looked ahead. "And I cried." She didn't turn to him. Instead, she said, "I used to think crying was weakness, but it's not." He smiled gently. "I know that now." They sat near the water. Zariah picked up a stone and tossed it. A ripple. Cole watched. "What made you say yes that day?" he asked. "To the gala invite." He nodded. "I needed closure. But I found something else." "What?" "Myself." Cole sat forward, elbows on knees. "I married Selina out of guilt and pride. I thought you left me. I didn't even question it, I just moved forward like a machine." Zariah responded, "You didn't fight for clarity. That hurt more than the wedding." He looked away. "I know." They talked for hours about their childhoods, their careers, their dreams that didn't involve press releases and curated events. Zariah mentioned how she loved teaching now. He admitted he'd stepped back completely from Maddox and company. "It wasn't the same without heart," he said. She nodded. "That's what I said at the board meeting." He chuckled, and I finally listened. The sun began to set. Cole turned to her. "I don't want to rush us. I don't expect anything. But I'm here. And I'm not leaving again without being honest." Zariah looked at him, really looked. He wasn't polished. He wasn't performing. He was showing up. "I don't know what we are," she said softly. "But I know I don't want to regret not seeing where this piece can lead." Cole reached out, not to hold her hand, but to offer her the same stone she'd thrown earlier. "I picked it back up," he said. She smiled. "A do-over?" "No, a choice." They walked back slowly. He didn't try to kiss her. She didn't expect him to. Sometimes healing isn't loud. Sometimes it's shared silence. That night, Zariah opened her journal. She wrote, "Love doesn't always knock twice, but if it returns, not with flowers, but with roots, I'll listen." Zariah kept her pace, not fast, not slow, just steady. The space between them, physical, emotional, was real, but it didn't feel threatening anymore. Cole texted once every few days. Sometimes a question, sometimes a quote from one of her old branding blogs, sometimes just "thinking of you." No reply needed. She liked that. No pressure, no plans, just presence. One Sunday afternoon, her mentorship students threw a small exhibition at a community center. Cole showed up, unannounced, not in a suit, not flanked by staff, just jeans, a white tee, and a curious heart. He walked around the exhibits, asked questions, praised the work. He took no photos. He wasn't there to be seen. He was there to see. "You're good with them," he said later, handing her a plastic cup of punch. "They don't need someone flawless," Zariah replied. "They need someone real." He nodded. "I'm still learning that." She looked at him. "Are you?" "Every day." They sat on the back steps of the center, feet swinging like kids. Zariah picked at the edge of her notebook. "I used to think closure meant slamming the door shut, and now I think it's when you can sit across from the person who hurt you and not feel like you need to prove anything." Cole swallowed. "And do you feel that now?" She looked away, eyes soft. "Some days, yes. Other days, I still hear her voice in my head." "Selina?" She nodded, telling me I'd never be enough. Cole clenched his fists but kept his voice even. "She's gone quiet lately. Probably trying to figure out how to rebrand the divorce." Zariah scoffed. "Let her. That's her race to run." He turned toward her. "And what race are you running?" Zariah thought for a moment. "One where peace wins." They didn't kiss that day. They didn't even hug. But something shifted. The way she didn't pull back when their arms brushed. The way he didn't apologize for staying a little longer. The way silence felt safe again. Later that week, Cole mailed her something. No note, no return address. Just a brown envelope. Inside was a photo. Her, at the exhibition, laughing with a teen artist. Someone must have taken it without her knowing. On the back, one line was written in pen. "You've always been the most honest light in every room." She kept it by her nightstand, not as a promise, but as proof. The next time he called, she invited him over. No big gestures, just pizza, a rom-com, and mismatched socks. They didn't sit too close, but not too far either. Cole didn't take off his shoes right away. Zariah raised an eyebrow. You planning to walk circles in those loafers on my carpet?" He laughed and kicked them off. They sat on the floor, legs crossed, surrounded by empty pizza boxes. A movie played, but neither could recall the plot. Every now and then, one of them would look at the other, pretending not to. Zariah poured tea. "Still prefer chamomile?" He blinked. "You remember that?" "I remember things that matter." Cole smiled, holding the warm mug. There was something healing about the room. No grand lighting, no fancy furniture, just bookshelves, blankets, and the scent of cinnamon. "I used to imagine what this would have been like," he said softly. Zariah didn't pretend to misunderstand. "And simple, that's the word. I imagined us like this. No headlines, no pressure, just here." Zariah leaned back against the couch. "I used to imagine it too, until imagining hurt more than it helped." They stayed quiet for a while. Outside, the night hummed with crickets and wind. Inside, Zariah lit a candle, vanilla and sage. She caught Cole staring at her again. "What?" she asked. "Your lighter," he said. "Not just your spirit, but your energy." Zariah met his gaze. "That's what healing does. It cuts away the weight people throw on you." He nodded. Then he stood, walked to her bookshelf, ran a finger along the titles. "You still write poetry?" "Sometimes." "Can I read one?" "No," she said quickly, then softened. "Not yet." Cole chuckled. "Fair." She offered him a blanket. "You can stay in the guest room if you're too tired to drive." He hesitated. Not because he misunderstood the offer, but because it felt like something sacred had just happened, and he didn't want to ruin it. He nodded. "Thank you." In the morning, she made pancakes. Cole appeared at the kitchen doorway, hair messy, eyes still adjusting. "You cook?" "Only for people I tolerate," she teased. They sat at the small table by the window. For once, there were no walls between them. Just sunlight, syrup, and soft music. Zariah reached for her phone to answer a text, but paused. Cole watched her. "Everything okay?" She looked at him, thoughtful. "It's Kellis, asking if I'd come speak at another event. You should." "I will. I'm just learning not to do everything alone anymore." Cole placed his hand over hers. Warm, steady. "You don't have to." Zariah didn't move, didn't pull away, didn't pretend it meant nothing. She looked at him, really looked. "I want to believe you mean that." "I do." "Then don't rush this." "I won't." He helped her clean the table, took out the trash, checked if the doors were locked before leaving. No kisses, no vows, but everything was changing. Quietly, gently, honestly. The headline hit by noon. Zariah Green and Cole Maddox spotted leaving her home together. Paparazzi hadn't been around, but someone snapped a photo, a blurry image of Cole, in yesterday's clothes, stepping into his car outside Zariah's neighborhood. By afternoon, gossip blogs exploded. Speculation, theories, commentary. Selena's name trended. Again. Zariah sat on her porch, sipping ginger tea, scrolling without emotion. Cole called. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine, but you knew this would come. I didn't want it to happen like this." She sighed. "It always happens like this when your life has been public property." He offered to issue a statement. She refused. "We don't owe anyone a narrative, but they'll spin one. They always do. And I'm not going to play defense in a game I didn't start." The next call wasn't from Cole. It was from a brand partner. They wanted to delay their campaign. Politely, professionally, but Zariah knew the drill. She paced her living room afterward, hands clenched. Cole showed up. Again. No cameras this time. Zariah opened the door, but didn't step aside. "They're messing with my work now," she said plainly. He stepped back. "I'll fix it." "How?" "I still have influence. I can—" "No," she cut in. "Don't make calls for me." She stepped outside, closing the door behind her. "I didn't survive all this to have a man step in now and fix it." Cole nodded, ashamed. "You're right." She softened. But I appreciate that you came. Later that night, she met with Kaylis and her PR team. They crafted a plan. No victim angles, no petty responses. Just Zariah's voice, her truth, a short video, her face, her words. I am not a scandal. I'm not a mistress. I'm not broken. I'm a woman who rebuilt herself. And that won't change because of gossip. It went viral, not for drama, but for dignity. Selena responded within hours. A carousel of photos. Herself, Cole, a caption about betrayal and a sister who never respected boundaries. The comments turned fast, half supportive, half calling her out. The truth had started cracking through. Zariah didn't reply, didn't repost, didn't flinch. But that night she cried, not because of Selena, but because loving Cole still felt like standing on glass. She called her therapist, booked 2 extra sessions. She cooked a quiet dinner for herself, watched a documentary on coral reefs. Let her heart rest. Cole sent flowers, no card, no name, just her favorite, orange tulips. She knew they were from him. She didn't text back, but she didn't throw them away either. 2 days passed. Then came the knock. Zariah opened the door, expecting a delivery. It was Selena, hair perfectly curled, lips pursed, eyes already brimming with drama. Zariah didn't blink. You're not welcome here. Selena smirked. We never did get closure. Zariah folded her arms. Closure isn't a conversation, it's a decision. And I made mine. I just want to talk. Zariah didn't move. So talk. From there, Selena scoffed. You're still the same. Always pretending you're above the chaos when you're the one who started it. Zariah didn't take the bait. You married him, lied, manipulated, posted your fairy tale like it was a victory lap. Selena stepped forward, voice low. You think this is about love? Cole was never your happy ending. He's mine. He just got confused. Zariah's jaw tightened. You think this is about possession. It's not. It's about respect, and you've never respected anyone but yourself. Selena's eyes flickered. You stole him. I walked away. Zariah shot back. You chased what I let go of. The difference? I found peace. You found control. Selena snapped. You don't deserve him. Zariah paused. Calm, unshaken. I don't need to deserve a man who chooses me. That's his choice, not your validation. Selena left in silence. No tears, no apology, no victory, just silence. Cole found out that evening. She came to your house. Zariah nodded. Wanted closure. Are you okay? She shrugged. I wasn't scared. Just done. Cole looked at her, proud, guilty, in awe. The world kept watching. Paparazzi followed Cole, hoping for a quote, a scandal, a photo. He gave them nothing. He started showing up differently, not to Zariah's house, but to community projects, boardrooms, creative hubs. Zariah watched quietly. She noticed the change, not for the cameras, but for himself. One afternoon she saw him talking to a group of teenagers. He wore jeans, a plain tee, no entourage. He was laughing, present, human, and something in her heart softened again. They met later that week. Neutral Ground, an art exhibit for emerging black female artists. Zariah was a guest speaker. Cole came without an invite. He stood in the back, hands in pockets, no press badge, no fanfare. Just eyes locked on her while she spoke about truth, courage, and the healing power of art. After her speech, he approached. You're light, he said. She smiled softly. And you're learning not to dim it. They walked through the exhibit, quiet. Then Cole stopped at a painting. 2 black women, back to back, holding mirrors, titled Sisterhood in Fractures. He read the plaque. This reminds me of you and Selena. Zariah glanced at it, except she never held a mirror. Will she ever apologize? I don't need her to, she said. I'm not waiting for a rewrite. I'm writing my own ending. Cole looked at her, eyes honest. No more hiding, No more slow burns. I want you. Only you. Zariah didn't answer with words. She reached for his hand, held it, not for the world, but for herself. Autumn brought crisp winds and new beginnings. For Zariah, it meant early mornings with mentees, long afternoons brainstorming brand, stories, and quiet evenings reflecting beneath the old oak behind her house. But on Saturdays, her routine shifted. Cole would drive in from the city. No fanfare, no distractions, just them. They didn't talk about the past anymore, not because it didn't matter, but because the present was finally good enough to hold their focus. Cole would bring food from places they used to dream of visiting. Zariah would tease him about his soft side. He'd tease her about her stubborn one. They laughed more. They touched more. And for the first time in a long time, love wasn't heavy. It was light. One Saturday, they cooked together. Zariah was barefoot, wearing a loose tee and head wrap, dancing to an old Sade track. Cole watched her, his heart full. She turned, saw his gaze, and smiled. You're staring, because I still can't believe you let me back in. Zariah looked down at the chopped onions. You didn't knock your way in. You waited. Cole took her hand. I'd wait forever. They sat outside that evening, wine glasses in hand. Zariah leaned into his shoulder. I'm scared, she admitted. Of what? That this might not last. That something will come and break it. Cole wrapped his arm around her. Then let's not focus on lasting. Let's focus on choosing. Every day, she looked up at him. Even on hard days. Especially then, he said. That's when it matters most. Later that night, they kissed under the stars. No expectations, no weight. Just two souls remembering what it meant to feel safe. The next week, Cole introduced her, officially, as his partner at a private fundraiser. No one was shocked. Not anymore. They whispered, took photos, wrote headlines. But Zariah didn't flinch. She stood beside him, confident and calm. Selena wasn't there. The story had changed. When asked by a reporter how they rekindled their connection, Cole smiled and answered simply, We stopped looking backward, Zariah added, and started showing up. Fully, at the end of the night, Cole held Zariah's hand tightly as they walked out. She squeezed back. She knew what this was. Not a fairy tale, not a revenge story. This was redemption. Slow, earned, real. Zariah stood beneath the tree. That same tree where he first kissed her again, after years of silence. Only now, the leaves whispered peace, not pain. It had been nearly 2 years since Cole filed for divorce. Since Selena's name faded from their lips and the media found other headlines. Now they were here, not as rebound lovers, not as broken halves, but as whole people choosing again. Cole arrived without fanfare. No suit, no speech, just a leather-bound journal in his hand. Zariah smiled as he approached, wind tugging at her braids. He handed her the journal again. I added one more letter. She opened to the last page. You told me love couldn't be built on broken things, so I tore mine down, brick by brick, not for you, but so that if you ever returned I wouldn't offer ruins, but a new foundation. This is me, not perfect, but present. If you're still willing, let's build something new. Cole. Zariah read it quietly. When she looked up, her eyes shimmered. No ring? Cole smiled. You hated the first one. She laughed. It wasn't the ring I hated. It was who gave it. He nodded slowly, then knelt anyway. No box. Just truth. Zariah Green. Will you choose me again? Not for a title, not for the story, but for the life we can create, away from everything and everyone. She didn't rush. She looked at him for a long time, like she was studying the man he'd become. Then she whispered, Yes. They didn't announce it. No press release. No social media caption. They married a month later on the porch of her Georgia home. Only 10 people attended. No wedding gown. No tux. She wore a yellow dress. He wore a linen shirt and sandals. Mira, Zariah's mentee, held the flowers. Kellis gave the toast. I knew what I was doing when I called you, she grinned. During the vows, Zariah said, I forgive the version of you that didn't fight, but I love the man who came back anyway. Cole said, you taught me that peace isn't silence, it's presence, and I vow to always be present. They kissed, not for the cameras, but for them, for what they lost, for what they reclaimed, for what they were building. 1 year later, Zariah stands in front of a room full of young black and brown women. Her mentorship program expanded into a non-profit. Cole helps with operations behind the scenes, never asking for the spotlight. She smiles as she speaks to the room. Let me be clear, heartbreak doesn't disqualify you from love. If anything, it qualifies you for the kind that lasts. In the back of the room, Cole watches her and smiles. Outside, they walk together, hand in hand. No more storms, no more war. Just two souls, finally home. Zariah never planned to take revenge. She chose growth. She chose peace. And that changed everything. She didn't destroy her half-sister's life. She refused to let hers be defined by it. She didn't beg for love. She walked away with dignity. And when love returned, it wasn't desperate or dramatic. It was healed. It was ready. If you've ever been betrayed, if someone took what you held dear and called it winning, let Zariah's story remind you, true strength is silent, true love is patient, and true healing doesn't seek applause. Drop a comment, type, I choose peace if Zariah's growth inspired you. Like this video, if you believe healing is more powerful than revenge. Share it with someone who needs this message. Subscribe for more stories that carry truth, love, and life lessons. This isn't just storytelling, it's a mirror. And maybe it's yours too.